Okay, so while it's always exciting to pour time and energy into bringing on new business, it is arguably more important, or perhaps not so arguably more important, to service your existing clients, to keep them happy, and to keep that client retention nice and high. And of course, the better you serve your clients, the more they will lead more business to you, whether inviting them to your events or just straight up referring you. So on today's show, we are going to be talking about ways that you can improve your client communication and better serve your clients. So this is session 4 in the Building a Better Advisory Business series. If you do want to go ahead and find out info for the future sessions and add those sessions to your calendar, you can go ahead and do that at horsesmouth.com/series. And if you did miss any of the past sessions, those replays are available for you at horsesmouth.com/betterbiz, better B-I-Z. And I do want to mention that this series is part of the build-up for Debbie's practice management workshop, which is coming up on July 19th to 23rd. It is virtual. You can find out more information about that workshop at horsesmouth.com/new normal. And to help us kick off the session, the question I want to ask you is, what are the elements of your client service that you're most proud of, that you think you and your team really nail, and or maybe share with us some elements of your client service that you're actively, perhaps you think are not the best, that need work. And without further ado, I will hand things over to Sean Bailey, Horse's Mouth Editor-in-Chief, and Deborah Taylor, the principal and founder of the Taylor Financial Group. Over to you guys.
Thanks, Doug. Welcome, everybody. Welcome, Debbie. Doug, just to answer your question from my perspective at Horse's Mouth, I'll say that an element of our client service is that, we have real people answering the phones. We answer your questions and get back to you, and we give you access to answers from experts. That's Horse's Mouth's answer to that question. But today we have on, one of the premier subject matter experts on the topic of practice management, Debbie Taylor. And we are looking forward to Debbie's 4-day workshop, July 19th to the 22nd. That's from noon to 3 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, 9 to noon out on the West Coast. People really love the workshop. And so today we're going to be talking about client service. Debbie, what are your thoughts on you've been writing about this for a long time. You field questions from advisors. You've put on workshops on the topic of client service. What do you feel like what do advisors struggle with most from your perspective?
I think they struggle with not giving it the proper attention or the proper thought. I think there is a certain amount of sort of like a little bit of like a laissez-faire attitude, maybe a little bit of a casualness to it. And I think that's a problem. I think it's a problem when you have a smaller practice, because I think it will be harder to grow, but it certainly is a problem once your practice grows, because if you don't have the structure, the systems in place, then your client service will suffer, the quality will suffer, it will be uneven, and you will lose clients. And just then, like a data tidbit, it is the number one reason that clients fire their financial advisor. It's not investment returns, even though we obsess about investment returns and brag about them in our discovery talks. The number one reason that an advisor gets fired is poor communication, lack of service, lack of attention, didn't care about me. However you want to say it, it all leads to the same thing, right? Is poor service. It's all one version or another of that.
Right. And of course, it's, it's curious at a certain level, because most people operating under an AUM model, but even if you're not operating under an AUM model, your clients are the people keeping you in business, right? And that quarterly fee that hits your account, you want it to keep coming, right? So Well, what sort of specific things do you feel like, well, what did you struggle with on the client service front when you first got into the business?
Yeah, I think the first struggle is really systematizing the processes, and not making it sort of random or client focused or dependent on having a meeting. There's a lot of sort of like variables, and you want to sort of strip that out and provide this consistent service, this level of expectation, so it sort of just happens. Like everybody knows what the next thing is supposed to be. They call it the next action approach. And so I would tell you that is the eternal struggle, I would tell you, for every practice, regardless of the size, but particularly the smaller practices as you're building them, is systematizing these processes, creating the processes, and then, systematizing that. And I'm not trying to say it like, oh, we're a bunch of like robots or automatons, and so everyone gets like turned off by it. So I'm not saying necessarily we got to go in that direction, but I'm saying you can't build this practice and you can't grow this practice unless everybody knows what they need to be doing. Otherwise, you're going to have to get involved in every single step of every single thing. And one of two things is going to be happening then. You're going to be completely exhausted, working night and day. It's not sustainable, or you're not going to do it. And then you're delegating it or leaving it to some junior person who doesn't really know what they should be doing. And therefore, it will get done sometimes, it won't get done other times, or it won't get done right. And so really, as your practice is small, what you want to do, and here's the expression, the way you got to think about it, is anytime you do something more than once, you need a process for it. I know that sounds crazy, but that's really the truth of it. If you're going to do it more than once, if you're going to do it more than twice, you need a process. And that affects all of your client service and everything else.
Can I bring you back to a phrase that you used at the very beginning there? I think you called it next step model?
Next action approach.
Next action approach. Yeah, talk about that for a second. What is that?
Yeah. And so basically the idea here is that whenever you do something, you should know what the next thing is that's to follow from that. And again, that's where it gets tricky, because a lot of times if you've got junior people, they finish something, they're done, they're moving on. And now it's on you to be like, oh, but remember, you've got to follow up in 2 weeks on this. Oh, you got to check back in a month. You should set up an open activity to make sure if the client doesn't get back to you, follow up, right? So really what you should have is a next action approach where every time you finish something, you should know what the next thing is that needs to be done.
Yeah. Yeah. Good. So just for the audience out there, if there's anybody out there who's listening, we're interested to hear from you about your take on what elements of your client service you're most proud of, or what you think needs work. But also we're interested in hearing if you're actively trying to improve specific areas of your client service right now. That would be an interesting topic.
I'd love to hear. Yeah.
Yeah. I have a question though, Debbie, on the referral front and the professional referral front. Seems to me that it can be kind of dicey when you bring outside professionals that you're referring to your clients, like for either tax or, or whatever the situation may be. Would seem that your clients would have a, expectation of client service. If you're recommending professional X to handle the estate plan, or professional X to handle, a retirement plan, whatever the case may be, there is an expectation that as you refer these other professionals, that the client thinks they're going to get the same level of service from the professionals that they get from you, the advisor. Has that thrown you some curveballs over the years? And what are your thoughts on that whole approach?
Yeah, it throws curveballs, because I can't control the estate planning attorneys, the tax preparers, the insurance agents. I mean, I can't control all these people. And so what I try to do is full disclosure right up front. And I'll say, look, like I recommended this estate planning attorney. I've been using him for over 25 years. He's an absolute genius. He's a genius, but he has horrible bedside manner. And so literally I say to the client, look, this guy's a genius. His prices are going to be very reasonable. He'll get right back to you. He will turn documents around. He's an absolute genius, but he's got horrible bedside manner. He's a little bit of a munchkin. He's like 5 foot tall, and he just cuts right to the point, and he's not a great hand holder. I just put it right out there. And if clients like, oh, well, so I do my best with full disclosure. I do my best to recommend, the most qualified people that make the most sense. But yes, you're right. It is not in your control. And at times there is some blowback. And at the end of the day, the clients know every day I get up, I do the best job for them every single day. And I think the clients are very forgiving when they know that, whether it's investment returns, whether you made a recommendation that didn't quite work out, whether it's a referral, a trade, anything, is every client knows every day I get up and I'm grinding it out for them. And I think they give you a lot of slack and respect in response.
So over the last year, we've, everybody's moved heavily into virtual meetings. And yeah, I think we've discussed that before. I think we feel like you have a pretty good situation going on there. I am curious, what are you seeing right now in terms of early desire for people to come in and meet you face to face, or what is going on with your client meetings, virtual versus in person?
Yeah, I think it's mixed. And I think that's going to be our world going forward. I was talking earlier before, Doug, we're talking about, different workshops. I'm seeing it with conferences. Is you're seeing a hybrid approach, right? We're allowing the flexibility. That's the good thing about technology. And so we are now allowing clients an option, and you're seeing that some clients just want to come in. They just want that face-to-face. They're old school. Obviously, our clients skew a little bit older, so they're old school, and that's fine. We're happy to accommodate them now that most of us are vaccinated, and we have a system for when people come to the office, like all of you do. And then a lot of clients want virtual, right? They realize over the last year that they don't need to, get out of their pajamas and spend half a day coming to see you. And so we're fine either way. We feel very comfortable either way.
So, but I'm just curious, like think back to June 2019, what percent of client meetings were virtual versus in person? And then, apply that to this month. I'm just curious to see where you're at with that.
Maybe 10 or 20%. I mean, we were always pretty like tech savvy. So I would say maybe we had 20% of our meetings were virtual because the clients were out of state. And we were using GoToMeeting, and we felt very comfortable with that. So we were using that all along. So I'd say 20%. And now I'd say probably closer to 50 to 70%. Sort of evenly split.
50 to 70% virtual. About more or less about half, you're saying.
Yeah, or maybe a little more than half. Yeah.
A little more than half is going to virtual.
That's what I'm seeing. Yeah.
Yeah.
But here's what I would tell you.
Yeah.
Is whether you're virtual or in person, you want to make sure that the benefits of that meeting are still being felt. So that would be an agenda, right? That would be confirming the meeting in advance. That would be screen sharing. So, you don't want to get sloppy with the prep, because what you see with the virtual meetings is that they have a tendency to be shorter and more to the point. And so you want to come in and you got to have like your screen sharing set up. So we'll have all of our documents ready that we're going to share, the agenda up there. So you want to make sure that you are as professional and as crisp in those virtual meetings as you are in those in-person meetings.
Right. Good. Why don't you talk a little bit about your, I think you convene once a year, maybe more frequently than that, a client group. Forget what you call it.
Client advisory group?
Client advisory, yeah. Right.
Client advisory board, yeah.
Yeah, tell us a little bit about that, and tell us a little bit about that. And you used to run it in person. Did you even do it last year during the pandemic? Yeah.
Oh, yeah, we did. That's very valuable. This is what I'm saying. Do not, one of the things that's really annoying me now as someone who focuses on client service is people using COVID as an excuse to cut service, cut amenities. There is no reason to do that. We have the technology to be at our best or even better. So let's not hide behind COVID. Certainly we shouldn't have hid behind over the last year. We definitely shouldn't be hiding behind it now. So yes, we had our client advisory board meeting. We have 2 of them a year. One of them is in the fall. That's co-ed client advisory board. It's usually in October. And we held it remotely. And then in the spring, we have Galentine's Day. That is for women. And that's, we call it our women's chat, trying to make it look a little more informal. And that's our client advisory board for the women in the spring in February.
So give us some examples of some important things that have come out of your client advisory board meetings that you went on to implement or maybe stop doing, whatever.
Yeah. And so, here's the big plug, right, for the Client Advisory Board, and we've written a ton of articles about it, is a lot of folks fear the Client Advisory Board. I mean, it's crazy. And so even when we do the practice management workshop and I start talking about, really it's all under the rubric of soliciting feedback, right? So we talk about this in the workshop is you want to get feedback from your clients in all different forms. And one of them is then the Client Advisory Board. And that chat will blow up during the workshop where people say, well, what if you have somebody sabotage it? What if, you're putting these two clients next to each other? Do not fear the Client Advisory Board. Okay. I actually had a newer client come in and he was like a little rough and he got on the Client Advisory Board and he'd only been a client for like a month or a month and a half. And he started being a little bit critical of me during the Client Advisory Board. We had sent him a bunch of emails to try to set him up on things. And apparently he wasn't reading any of these emails. So he was basically saying we hadn't communicated with him. And he started then being a little bit critical. He's a little rough around the edges. And everyone on the Client Advisory Board started actually defending me to this guy. Okay. and they're like, well, that's not our experience with Debbie. We've been clients for 20 years. Debbie's great with communication. What do you mean you don't know about the week ahead? I get that every week. And by the end of the Client Advisory Board, he realized that he hadn't been reading his emails. And he was like, oh, I didn't realize that you reached out on this, you reached out on that. And everyone else was defending me. And by the end, he was like part of the group and like totally on board. And so like, if you are proud of what you're doing, if you're being the best advisor that you should be, then you should not fear any of this. And even how Sean started about the referrals, like, oh, what happens? You get a little blowback. I don't fear anything. Okay. Every day we're getting up, we're doing our best job. If you're doing your best job, you got nothing to fear. You got nothing to fear. And so that's the Client Advisory Board, the feedback, the specific feedback. You think about your business night and day. I think about my business night and day, but you think about it from your standpoint. So the clients come in and from their view, stuff that you're doing that you think is great, that you think is working, it's not working for them. Okay. And so the feedback, like the way we designed the week ahead, our weekly newsletter. Every year I take a poll. Do you guys want the week ahead to continue? Because it is a lot to put out a weekly newsletter. And every year they're like, yes, we want the week ahead. We started doing a planning newsletter, a monthly planning newsletter. The topics we cover. We weren't talking much about caring for aging parents. Probably this is the reflection, this is my bias, but unfortunately both of my parents are dead. So I don't have any personal experience with that. So I'm not talking about it so much. And they're like, everyone in the room was caring for aging parents. I'm like, how did I miss that? How did I miss that? And so there's just a lot that comes out of it. So much that comes out of it.
Right. That's good. And
wait, we have a question. How do you decide who to invite to your Client Advisory Board? So again, this goes back to my being fearless mentality is I say the more the merrier. I invite my A+A and B clients. Okay. If you invite your C clients, and of course everyone should be segmenting their books, right? If you invite your C clients, and this is the same thing when you survey your clients, which you should be doing also, you will get different responses from your C client versus your A+A and B. So you need to be prepared for that because your A+A and B, you're touching them all the time. So when you're like, oh, like, do you think our, frequency of communication is good? Your A+A and B, if you're doing your job, are they going to be, yes, we've got another participant right here. Your A+A and B is going to be like, oh yeah, you reach out to us all the time. We have quarterly meetings. You've got great communication. If your C is in the room and you're only reaching out to them once or twice a year, your C client's going to be like, well, you could reach out a little bit more. So just be careful. I definitely believe the more the merrier. But remember, if you're putting your A+ and your C in the same room and you're asking the same question, if your service model is working the right way, then your C is going to have less communications than your A+, and they're going to react differently to those questions. And then it can be confusing. So we keep it A+A and B. And I invite them. And you know something? If you go through your list and you're worried about inviting certain A+, certain A, certain B, that tells you something. Okay. Either they shouldn't be an A+A and B, or they shouldn't be your client, or you're not working hard enough. If you've got to sit there and cross people off or figure out who should be there, who shouldn't be there.
Yeah. Yeah. What about, not everybody has, Jersey girl thick skin. you're over the years when you've been doing this, have you, felt like you've taken some, I mean, obviously you just mentioned that one guy who wasn't reading his email and kind of showing himself for what he was. But, maybe there are some sort of stinging lashes or arrows that are legit, but hurt.
Sure. I mean, you're dealing with people's money, you're dealing with their entire livelihood, their legacy. I mean, you've got to be out there, and all feedback is good feedback. Even when I get feedback where I'm like, what the heck is this coming from? Every feedback you got to look at. And if the feedback is off base, then you got to look at it and say, I didn't create proper expectations here. Okay. Because somebody's got to take responsibility, and you can only control yourself. I cannot control the client. So if somebody comes on, they're like, gee, I thought you're going to be communicating more with me. Gee, I thought you're going to have better investment returns. What that says to me is I did not properly communicate. I did not properly set proper expectations about what we can and can't do. And I need to have a conversation with this client and try to set it right. So all feedback is good feedback, even if it feels like it's out in left field. I had somebody criticize once the type of wine we used at our holiday party. I think was that you, Sean? Was that from you?
I think it was that was the Christmas gift. That was the Taylor labeled Christmas gift that, came out through my nose or something when I took a sip of it. But anyway, that was a long time ago. You've since been to Napa Valley and rectified that matter.
I have completely. You got rosé champagne from Louis Roeder winery for the wine party.
That was
We've come a long way. We've come a long way.
That was a good one, but that was 6 months ago. So I'll have to check and see if gotten anything else recently. No, we're all just kidding here completely. So that client advisory board meeting, I know you've written a lot about it, but I recall interviewing somebody a while back who she's from up in Westchester. She's a good advisor. I can't remember her name at the moment, but she held she had the client advisory board. She put on a dinner for them, or they had dinner and drinks. And then I think they pulled out their marketing material. Maybe they were doing a rebranding or something like that. And they were asking for feedback. Tell us how you structure these meetings. Like, how is your agenda set specifically, or is it totally, give us a sense of what it would be like.
Yeah. So every meeting I hold has an agenda, every meeting with the clients, everything. Okay. And so we have an agenda. I do think I've included it in the Horse's Mouth articles I've written. And we go through our marketing efforts, and we show them what our outreach is. So we go through that. We talk to them about new initiatives, things that we were working on during the year, like planning, IRA distribution planning, reviewing tax returns. So we talk to them about our new initiatives that we've just implemented, and then ones we're looking to do. We talk to them about our marketing efforts. We talk to them about our outreach. And basically what we do is we review what we've done, because it's always interesting to see how that's gone over, right? Oh, gee, that was additive. Oh, no, it wasn't. It's also interesting to see how much of them actually knew about it, because it's amazing all the stuff you do. And they'll be sitting there and be like, I didn't realize that you were reviewing tax returns. And I'm like, how can you not? We sent 5 announcements to you. We included in the week ahead. Like, how could you not know this? And they're like, oh, I didn't realize that. And so so I review what we've done. And if it's additive, if they even knew about it. And then I'll talk to them about new initiatives for going forward and where they think we should be putting, our efforts and our resources. We also review our client events with them to see, again, what they've liked in the past and what we should be doing going forward. Those are some of the key things that we review. I think of others.
Yeah. And typically, how long does the event go?
Yeah, I'm very clear about starting on time and ending on time. And so we will it's typically 12 to 2 p.m. and we serve lunch. We used to do it at a country club. Now I just do it in my office because I like my team to be able to come in and out. And so we do it at the office. That way we have the screen up there, and we can run through everything on the big screen. I mean, I know country clubs will have big screens. It's just easier for me to do it in the office, and everyone's fine. We have a really nice lunch spread. For the women, what we do is we meet at 4:15. We go on for about an hour. The women's chat is what we call it. Their critiques are brutal. BTW. Okay. They're brutal. They just start hammering me that entire time. And then we go like 4:15 to like 5:30, 5:45. It's a little shorter. And then in the past, we've either done a cooking class where we've gone to a place, or we go to a nice dinner at a very nice restaurant by us. So it goes back and forth.
Yeah, good. So what are some other types of feedback you've received from clients over the years that you've thought, came outside of those two annual feedback? I guess I'm getting at, like, what are other examples of non-formatted feedback that you get that come in, off schedule, so to speak?
Yeah. So every client agenda, we have an item on it at the very end. What could we be doing differently for you? Okay. So that's one way to solicit the feedback. Another thing is we survey the clients. We typically do that twice a year. So we'll do that like early on in January. And then we typically do it around the summertime as we send out a survey to the clients. So that's another way. And then honestly, I do find in social settings, you have nice opportunities to get feedback from clients when they're a little bit more relaxed and they can just sort of start talking to you about things. And so that's a great way to get like unfiltered feedback.
Right. And so where are you regarding those kind of social settings for clients now that we're moving out of the pandemic? Anything, are you doing any in-person client events between now and the end of the year at this point? What's on your calendar?
Yeah. And let me just mention about the feedback that's interesting. Again, seeing things from a client's viewpoint versus ours is as our firm has grown, we've added team members. I know what they all do, right? The clients are very confused about who does what. Okay. It's actually very interesting, again, showing this bias because I know what's going on, right? And so we now have this new client onboarding that is very high touch, very communicative. And so the onboarding, what we've done, I know this might be slightly off topic, but I am really proud of this and want to share this, is every Friday we send an email to the client with a chart in the middle of where they are on the onboarding process and check off the things that we've finished and then leave blank the things that are unfinished. And it's not just a chart. Obviously, there's some text, but then there's also a chart, and the chart has like, I don't know, probably about 10 or 15 of the critical steps. And then you can see the progress. And that goes out every single Friday during the onboarding process. And depending on how quickly the client moves through that onboarding process, that Friday update literally can go out for 2 or 3 months every single Friday until we are through the bulk of everything. And so that has been, I think, really great for the clients to see, to be onboarded, to have high touch, know where they stand. And then by the time that's done, we have the 45-day review appointment, which is absolutely critical, again, to make sure that you started off right, that you didn't miss anything, that the client doesn't have buyer's remorse, and sort of make sure that anything that you missed in that onboarding process, that, it gets corrected at that time. So anyway, just as an aside. Yeah. But some of the feedback is clients are confused about who does what. And so we send out, the second the paperwork is signed, we send out a welcome to TFG email to the client literally the same day. And it lists every single team member, what they do, their direct lines, and who they can reach out to. So that's just an aside. That is a result of client feedback.
So, but you've changed your model over the years. As I recall, you would have, people that would be assigned to clients, but now you've got a bigger team, and you're hearing some clients like, yeah, you might have sent the email that says, Jared does this, and, Andrea does that, and Cheryl does this, but the clients don't read that or save it off. But nonetheless, 6, 9 months, a year or two down the road, whatever the case may be, aren't you, I gather from what you're saying, you're experiencing some clients feeling like, I don't know who the heck handles what there. 1 second it's this person, the other second it's that person. I'm not sure whether Debbie knows what's going on, so on and so forth. So what are your thoughts on that? And why did you move from, in essence, assigning somebody to a client to this sort of ensemble approach?
Yeah, I think that's really the critical question is early on when we were a lot smaller, we had like this vertical approach. And so you'd get assigned, let's say his name's Matt, you'd get assigned Matt, and Matt would handle everything for you. He'd handle your investments, your client service. Oh, I need $5,000 check. And then he'd also handle your financial plan. Okay. And I had two guys at the time and basically split the book in half. And I matched it based on personality. And they also started developing some niches. Like one of them got really good at stock options. And so then anyone that had stock options went over to one of them. Okay. That worked really well. But as the firm grew, and honestly, over the years, the technical requirements, the software has become so much more advanced about what we're doing for clients. I mean, 5 years ago, we weren't doing distribution planning. We didn't have Holistiplan. Yes, we were reviewing tax returns, but that was manual. And then they'd get some email back from me. Now we've got a whole process around reviewing tax returns, Roth IRA conversions, drawing down IRAs. I mean, it's become a whole like niche, this whole other thing that literally like didn't even really exist 5 years ago. And so it became too much for the same person to be handling client service requests, handling paperwork, like the vertical model. Too many things were trying to fit in, and they couldn't get really good at all of them. And so we went into what we call a specialist approach. And so now we have someone, and she handles the plans. Then we have somebody, and he handles the paperwork. And so we went to a specialist approach. And what happens then is early on, it can be a little overwhelming or confusing because in one day you could get emails from 2 or 3 different team members who are all working, on your case. And basically how I explained to clients early on is I said, this is almost like you are like driving a NASCAR, and you know how you come into the cockpit and everybody comes running over to the car and everybody knows exactly what they need to be doing on that car. So you could be zooming on your way. I'm like, that's basically what we have at Taylor Financial Group, particularly when you first come on board, is everybody has their role. And so you're going to get emails from different people because they all have a role to play in getting you, up and running. And people are like, okay, it's interesting because the older people still struggle with it a little bit, right? Particularly if they were handling their investments on their own, or if they came from a self-directed place where they didn't get into all these other things. They just had one guy because they weren't doing anything for them, right? And so they had one guy at Fidelity, and they'd call him and they'd get a check request, right? And so they're not used to having a team approach. But what I find is that the younger folks feel very comfortable with that because they work in a corporate environment, and they get that you don't go to the same person for 20 different things. They understand that. And so sometimes it's the older people that we need to have a little more hand-holding with them. And when that happens, then we will assign sort of like a concierge, like one person to act as the clearinghouse for all the other people.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Good. On the client communication front, I think I mentioned this last week we met, that you were getting ready to start something called office hours. I think you've done at least one office hours. Is that right?
I've done several.
Oh, you've done several. Okay. Well,
Yeah.
why don't we step through that, since that was clearly a client service kind of thing. Why don't you describe for us how you are communicating to your clients that you're going to be doing this thing called office hours, and how you're explaining to them what it is. And then let's talk about what really unfolded.
Yeah. So when we went into lockdown in March, we started monthly virtual webinars right away, like within a few weeks. Okay. Because it was very clear to me that we needed to stay close to these clients. These clients are paying us 24/7, 365 days a year, and I could not disappear on them. And so we right away went into doing monthly webinars. Sometimes it was twice a month, even depending if there was like a big like legislation passed or something like that. Okay. And we started doing videos more than ever before, little 2-minute videos every week. So just started doing all this outreach. Okay. So we were doing these monthly webinars. And what I found is that some of the attendance started falling down a little bit over the last 2 months or so. I think with the economy opening and spring coming, people are getting out. And so we weren't getting quite the attendance. So I thought, okay, let me try something different. And Sean, you let me know about office hours. So I said, okay, try anything once, let's run with this. So we did away with the monthly webinars. We're going to quarterly webinars, for the end of the quarter. So we'll have one the first week of July. Actually, I think it's the second week of July because of the way the July 4th holiday falls, because we do them the Thursday at 4:15. So it's actually the second Thursday, but typically it's the first Thursday at 4:15 after the quarter ends. And then we went to weekly office hours. And the weekly office hours are on Monday at 4:15, again, after the market closes. We advertise them in our weekly newsletter, Facebook, and we boost those. And then we send emails out to all of our clients, and it's like that countdown email in advance of the webinars that I've seen other people do, and we do that, where we're like, okay, it's 1 week to the webinar, it's 5 days to the webinar. I mean, they get this whole countdown, 15 minutes to sign in, the morning of, all that. And so we do all that sort of anticipation countdown stuff. So that's the office hours are 4:15. I will tell you, at least so far, we haven't had tons of attendance. Some other folks might have more attendance, so I'm not discouraging you from doing it because I think it's a great idea, but they're new. So what I'm finding is that the people that join are those FOMO people that have the fear of missing out, that just want as much information as possible. And so those are the people that are joining. So I'm not getting tons of people, but I'm getting people who are nervous about the markets, who really want the latest information from Debbie. And I'm okay with that so far as we sort of build up the following, because these are people then you need to stay close to because they're nervous. And so if I don't have 50 people on this webinar, but I have a webinar office hours, but right now I have 10 people, but these are people that I need to stay close to. Well, then I'm learning that these are people we need to stay close to. And that's very helpful to me. So we're still trying to build the attendance, but we'll see how that goes. And like I said, I have also continued with the quarterly webinars.
So, frankly, I think to me, something that's positioned as office hours is going to be somebody who, maybe they're coming because they want to check in with you on something or other, but it's not like, I'm not sure exactly, but I wouldn't expect a large number of people to pile into something that was positioned as kind of a grab bag of, hey, what do you got on your mind? What's on your mind? I'm going to talk about so-and-so for a little tiny bit, but basically I'm here to respond to questions from my clients. So I think 10, a dozen people is a great turnout, frankly.
Oh, and let me mention what I do, by the way, just, again, I like structure. Is I start with prepared remarks for the first probably 5 or 10 minutes. Okay. Then I open it up to questions. So I don't want it to be this free for all. I don't want people showing up feeling like, hey, Debbie's not prepared. She's just winging this thing. There is never a moment where you want your clients thinking that you're winging it. And here's basically what I do is I have a special notebook that I keep all my investment ideas in. So when I read Barron's, when I read Wall Street Journal, I get good data points from Morningstar, whatever, is I then have my little like spiral notebook and I will jot those notes in it. Well, every Monday morning, David Kelly does a JPM call from 11 to 11:30 a.m. And I attend that call every Monday morning. Okay. There are a ton of other calls. I'll have my team sit on all these other calls, but I always attend that call. I feel like it's a great way to start off the week. And they start off with an economic update and then they get into the markets and implementation. And so if nothing else, then I have the notes from that call. And basically I just work off that. But of course I have notes from, Goldman and Barron's and everything else. So just so you know, I do think you should start with prepared remarks.
Set piece, right?
Yeah.
And how do you describe what that set piece is in the marketing that you're doing for the office hours?
I'm sorry, Sean.
Well, I mean, do you say when you're sending out an email saying Debbie's going to be doing office hours at 4:15 on Monday, bring us your questions or comments, and do you say, and Debbie's going to be, talking for a few minutes on, what the meaning of the latest jobs number report is or something like that?
We we don't get so specific like, oh, this week we're going to talk about unemployment. Like we don't do that. That's actually a great idea. And we'll probably make that change. That's a great idea. I like that idea. Thank you, Sean. I always learned from you, Sean.
Yeah.
I mean, part of it, in fairness, is that it is a little bit like impromptu in the sense that,
sure, I think that's the idea.
Yeah. Very recent, like Barron's on Saturday and Sunday, David Kelly on Monday morning. So it is, and that is part of the idea, right? It's not this whole scripted stale thing. It's like fresh. It's fresh. It's fresh. And the people that want fresh, those are the ones coming. Like they don't want to wait for their appointment 2 months from now. They want to know what's happening now. And so anyway, so yeah, all right. I like that though. Mm-hmm.
So I'm just curious because there's so much discussion about inflation these days, and you just had one on Monday. You just had one of these a couple of days ago on Monday, right?
Yeah, sure. Mm-hmm.
And your crew skews older, so of course they can remember inflation in 1981, 82. What are you hearing from your clients on inflation? I know this is off topic, but it is about client service. So
Very nervous. Very
they're
nervous.
nervous.
Very
They're
nervous.
Mhm.
Very nervous. I mean, if you read, it is the number one concern from economists. And that, of course, then is all the news and then trickles down to your clients. And like
Yep.
you say, they have PTSD 40 years later. I mean, I remember sitting in lines at the gas pump when I was 10 years old. I mean, I remember that. Okay.
Yep.
And so, yeah, very, very nervous, top of mind, very nervous. So that's where we use the week ahead, which is our weekly newsletter.
Mhm.
And we are addressing a lot of those issues, in the week ahead every week. I have a column that starts called From Where I Sit.
Right.
And that's from me, where I write about, inflation, why folks should be invested in value and cyclicals. I will take like sort of my topic du jour and I will write about that. And that is at the top of the week ahead every week.
Right. Good. Yeah. So, by the way, how often are you're doing these once a month, right? The
What's
office
that?
hours?
No,
Office
no,
hours?
that's weekly.
Oh, you're
that's
doing them
weekly.
weekly? Oh,
Yes, every
Oh.
Monday at 4:15.
Oh.
Oh, I'm a glutton for punishment.
I guess so, yeah. How have you balanced in recent years, particularly because you were mentioning following a particular marketing approach of, 5 days to the webinar, 3 days to the webinar, 1 day to the webinar, today's the webinar, 15 minutes to the webinar. It's a lot of emails. And,
It is.
it comes from somebody who's, authorized sending a lot of emails over the years.
Mhm.
How are your clients handling, such a high volume of emails?
It's funny you say that because we were sending something out earlier this week and they were like, Debbie, it was Monday. And they were like, Debbie, if we send this out, then they will get like 3 emails from us in 1 day. And so
Yeah,
there
that
is,
issue.
there is an issue with that. I mean,
Yeah.
there were times where I'm like green lighting. I want to send an announcement about Roth conversions. And they're like, and I want this going out Thursday. And they're like, Debbie, we can't send it Thursday because we're sending out these 3 other things on Thursday. So look, if you are operating at this level, then you do need somebody. Like we have a schedule of our outreach, like a calendar.
Yeah.
Because they will slot things in, because we literally over the last 2 months, like during tax season and stuff, we literally had an announcement, is what we call the client announcements, which is like, your IRA conversion, like stuff that's deadline driven or like hot off the presses. And so we send like over the last 2 months, we were sending those announcements out almost every single week. So they're getting an announcement from us of something that is so top of mind that I don't want it buried in the week ahead. Then they're
Right.
getting the week ahead on Monday. Then they're getting their monthly planning letter from us. Then they're getting stuff on the office hours every Monday also. I mean, there's a fair amount of communication going out. That's just off the top of my head. I'm not even talking about any of the random stuff. And
Yeah.
so it's a fair amount. I have never been criticized for communicating too much, because that's sort of a very weird criticism.
Yeah.
But I think the challenge is at times people block out the noise.
Yeah.
Okay. Which is what I was talking about early on, is sometimes people are like, I don't read my emails.
Yeah.
I don't read I read my emails only once a week, whatever. I'm retired, Debbie, come on, and,
Yeah, right.
the only thing I could tell you is, nobody faults me for trying. Right. So Debbie, I don't read my emails. They feel bad because I'm like, I reached out to you about this. You got an announcement on this. I was in the weekly newsletter. They're like, yeah, Debbie, I don't read my emails. I'm just so sorry, And so, something at the end of the day, all I can do is try. You got to control the controllables. I can control what me and my team do. I cannot force my clients to read my emails. So we do everything we can. And then what we'll do is in the week ahead, at the end, we'll have, in case you missed it, ICYMI. And so stuff that I think is really important, but they're not reading their emails all the time. We have a section ICYMI, and we designate that. By the way, that was a recommendation from the client advisory board.
Okay, to sort of punch up the important things and give them one more crack at it.
Yep, because we would post the same thing over and over again, because I know some of these people aren't reading their emails all the time. But then the people who are reading the emails are like, Debbie, it's confusing, because I'll start reading something, but then I realize it's something you also sent me last week. It's the same thing. I'm like, I know, because some people aren't reading it from last week. And so now we have, in case you missed it. That was from the client advisory board.
Good. All right. Well, if anybody out there wants to ask a question on.
We got questions.
Oh, we
You
do?
see them?
Okay.
Oh yeah.
Good.
Oh yeah. Doug's
Good. All
posting
right,
them.
well, let's get to the questions then.
All right. So how do you prompt clients to complete the onboarding without it taking too much time? Do you wait until onboarding is complete before you start your analysis and planning? All right. So there's a lot packed in there. And this is a whole thing, right? This is a whole thing. So basically, how do we prompt clients? That's part of that Friday email going out. And that's why I like that chart form, because people have the tendency to want to check the box, right? It's very much our personalities, right? You want to finish, check the box, check the box. So we have this chart and we're like, oh, good, you did 8 of these things, but we got these 5 other things. Get us your tax return, get us that annuity statement that you owe us, whatever. So that's one way that we sort of have that gentle nudging. And of course, in the email, there's an email with the chart. So that's one way. The 45-day appointment is another way where you get them back in here and you're like, by the way, you did a nice job with these 10 things, but we still have these 3 open items that we've got to work on. So that's another thing. There's a question here in connection. Do I onboard folks myself or do my staff? No, this would be crazy for me to do this myself. So my team handles that. Here's the other thing we do internally is we have created a spreadsheet of every single client's name, a new client, and the onboarding, the critical steps. And we go through that spreadsheet 2 mornings a week during our morning huddle to see where they are in the onboarding process. And if I see a client dragging their feet, not getting us critical statements, like whatever the thing is, then I'm seeing that 2 mornings a week in our morning huddle. And then I will escalate it and say to the junior person, you got to pick up the phone, you got to call them, you got to send them separate email, whatever. Again, we will escalate it. If there was a question in connection with the planning. So this is where I'm saying we're operating on multiple tracks. So when a client comes on board, we are then working on their investment recommendations, and we try to get the investment recommendations to them within the first 2 or 3 days of them coming on board. And there's a process with that, and that's handled by somebody in my office. And then literally within the first day of them coming on board, they get a client profile organizer to complete so we can start the planning process. And we don't allow one to hold up the other. So some people, the investment stuff goes along very smoothly, but they don't get us the planning stuff, right? Oh, they don't get us their mortgage statements, whatever. So they're operating on independent tracks. And again, that's the benefit of that 45-day appointment, is then we can circle back and say, hey, we did great over here, but we still have open issues here that we want to continue to work through. So hopefully that is helpful there. Is there a sample of your onboarding process in horse's mouth? I'm sure I know I've written some articles recently about it because it's really evolved. We've really built it out because
Doug posted a link to a couple of your articles.
Oh, thank you, Doug. I didn't see that.
We'll have links to your other articles.
So we grew a lot during COVID. We're looking to bring in $10 million this month alone. Okay. And so if you're bringing in $10 million in a month, I remember when there was an entire year and I'd bring in 10 million, it was like 1 million a month. We're bringing in 10 million in 1 month. If you are bringing $10 million in 1 month, like, you have got to have this thing down, which is why I'm talking about the processes and specialists. Otherwise, things are going to fall through the cracks and you're going to have very upset clients. And so you want to make sure that your growth is sustainable. And so anyway, excellent idea. I'm not sure what that was too. Debbie did write about, do you onboard folks? No, we talked about that. Can you bottle Debbie? That was a good one, Victor. How many clients do you typically onboard in a month, in a year? Yeah, I know. So this is crazy, right? We're bringing on $10 million this month. Thankfully, it's probably only like four or 5 clients. They're bigger clients. They're $2 and $3 million clients, thankfully. But they're $2 or $3 million clients. There's a lot of moving pieces within each client, right? And so that's where you see that we've got that special internal spreadsheet with all the steps to make sure that that $3 million client, that every specialist, right, everyone in the cockpit is doing exactly what they need to be doing. And also that the left hand needs to know what the right hand's doing. So how many clients? So I would tell you, it's going to be 3 to 5 clients this month alone. This is a big month. This might be the biggest month we've ever had, 10 million in 1 month. That's a big month for us.
Right.
That's a big month. So, yeah.
Okay. So for the person who wanted to know, can you bottle Debbie? Well, no, of course we can't bottle Debbie, but we have the next best thing, July 19th to the 22nd, the new normal practice management workshop, Debbie Taylor. You can mainline Debbie Taylor for 3 hours a day, 4 days in a row. I'm not sure what will happen on the 5th day, but
I pass out.
This is your chance. this is your chance to come. People love the workshop. Debbie lays out everything, her whole playbook. It's all there. And of course, we don't expect you to leave and become Debbie Taylor or implement every last thing. That's not, everybody knows you go to these workshops and, you really hope to come with one or two things out of it that are really excellent that you can execute on. Debbie's workshop will give you more than one or two things for sure. So we want to make sure you know about that and get you to get signed up. I think there's still a chance to save some money if you sign up, although it's probably getting pretty close. Yeah, it would be June 19th. That should be getting pretty, you probably have 2 days to save some money.
And let me just say something about the workshop too, which is really cool, is it's very interactive. And so it's not just me out there like, oh, I do that. It is the most active chat room that you've ever seen. And so what I do is I have my team on during the workshop. And as I'm talking about things, then you guys are typing in questions, and then my team will post links, post articles, post the spreadsheets. So we're like 100% transparent. It is our total game book. I do game plan. I do not hold anything back, anything. Okay. But my team's also on answering all those questions and stuff. And basically, we meet you where you're at. And so I know that, my firm's growing a little bit. Some of you might not be at that level yet. Okay. But there's a lot of things that I talk about that I've been doing from the very beginning, or you Chinese menu it. And I come in and I say, okay, here are the 30 things that we're doing. And you're like, okay, I can't do 30, but I can do these 5. That's okay for this year. Then you do those 5. So right. I just want to mention that.
Good. We got a question from Cliff, very interesting one. How do you separate the investment process from the financial planning piece?
Yeah, I knew that was coming.
Yeah.
I knew that was coming. Look, it's a little bit of a conundrum, right? Because one does drive the other a little bit. I totally get that. We are super passionate about planning. And I knew that this question was coming. And in the interest of time, I didn't say anything, but you asked the question. So here's what I do is it's a little bit imperfect early on. Because you're right, the plan is not done. The plan takes time. I mean, sometimes it takes 3 to 6 months to get the plan together through no fault of our own. And I can't sit on investment recommendations for 6 months. And so what we'll do is we will ask certain questions while we're putting together the investment recommendations, the critical questions, so that we can put something together. So we'll say, okay, what are your liquidity needs? What's your time horizon? Do you have any big expenses coming up? Do you need cash flow from the portfolio? So we will ask those critical questions. We will put them through Riskalyze, of course. So we'll ask those critical questions to sort of get the lay of the land. And full disclosure will be like, look, we're working on your plan over here, but we don't want to hold up your investment recommendations. But once that plan is completed, we do circle back. And if there is this big mismatch, then we will reconcile. Okay. And so that's how we handle it. But,
Right.
Great question. I mean, it was in the back of my mind. Absolutely.
Okay. Bruce, master members get a 25% discount off of all of Horse's Mouth's workshops. So that's a major benefit of being a master member. You'll always get that 25% discount. So, well, I think that does it for us for this week. I do also want to remind everybody that next week, Jeff Levine and Debbie Taylor will be putting on their Savvy Tax Planning School for Advisors. We've already got a lot of people signed up for that. It's 4 days, 3 hours a day, massive download on all the big things that have been going on in the tax arena. And there are a lot, and there continue to be a lot. And it is, I just have to say, guiding clients on taxes has just become a very, very big topic over the last few years. The personal finance press is writing more and more about it. The public is realizing that they want good tax guidance from their advisor. They expect it. Forget about what compliance says and this issue of offering tax advice. I mean, it's just baked into everything you do. And so if you want to see how Jeff does it and how Debbie does it, come to the workshop. Starts noon Eastern Standard Time. If you sign up today, you might even be able to get your physical guide in time for day 1. I'm not sure about that part, but you'll certainly get a digital copy at least and get the physical one sent later. So, Cliff asks, might we offer the workshop again later in the year? Yeah, Cliff, we're thinking about that. I got to check with Debbie's schedule. We might be doing something maybe, well, we'll see with her in the last quarter. If not, we always do it. We're doing it probably January, February next year, but we might squeeze one in before the end of the year. We'll have to see how that goes. So Debbie, thanks again for being on. Doug, we'll have another live stream next week, right?
Not next week because it is the workshop. It'll be the following
Oh, that's
week.
right. Yes,
Taking a
of
week
course,
off.
there's tax workshop next week, so we're taking a week off. But then
I'm
we'll
not taking a week off.
So yeah, so we won't be on next week, but the week after we'll be back with our, build a better business series leading up to Debbie's workshop on July 19th. So thanks everybody. Have a great day. And, give some more thought to your client service. I think we've got a lot of great tips from Debbie today. Take care, everyone.
Thank you, everybody.